The gunshot echoed through the dusty streets of Silver Ridge, Montana, in 1878. But Violet Garrison didn't flinch. She was far too accustomed to her father's violent displays of temper. Standing tall in the doorway of their whitewashed house at the edge of town, she watched as Jacob Garrison reloaded his revolver, his face flushed with whiskey and rage, his eyes narrowed to slits beneath his graying brows. "You'll do as I say, girl," he spat, holstering his weapon with practiced ease. "I've made the arrangement, and there's good money in it. 38 years I've walked this earth, and never have I had such a disobedient child." Violet's hands trembled, but her voice remained steady. "I'm 20 years old, father. You can't simply trade me away like cattle." Another man might have been moved by the quiet dignity in her tone, the determined set of her jaw, or the intelligence that shone in her hazel eyes. But Jacob Garrison saw only defiance, the same defiance that had characterized his daughter since her mother's death 5 years ago. "Mr. Holloway has agreed to take you as his wife. He's willing to overlook your stubborn nature and that foolish education you insist on flaunting." A respectable widower with a fine house and business in Helena. Jacob stepped closer, his breath sour with liquor. "Consider it your punishment for refusing Richardson's boy last spring. I won't have you turning down suitable matches because of your ridiculous notions about love." Violet's throat tightened. Albert Richardson had been 45 years old, cruel to his horses, and had buried 2 wives already. She'd rather die than marry such a man. And now her father had found someone even worse, Emmett Holloway, a man of 60 with a reputation for breaking the spirits of young women. "I won't go," she said simply. Jacob's palm struck her cheek with such force that she stumbled backward. "You leave with Holloway in 3 days, or I'll drag you there myself." He turned away, muttering, "Should have sent you to your aunt's years ago, saved myself the trouble of raising a willful girl alone." Violet pressed her hand to her stinging face, fighting back tears that threatened to spill. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing her cry. Not again. Not ever. After her father stomped off toward the saloon where he'd spend the remainder of the day drinking away what little money they had, Violet retreated to her small bedroom. The space was sparse but neat: a narrow bed with a handmade quilt, a chest of drawers, and a small bookshelf filled with precious volumes she'd collected over the years. Her mother's silver hairbrush lay on the dresser, the only item of value she'd inherited. Sinking onto the edge of the bed, Violet finally allowed her tears to fall. In 3 days, she would be handed over to a man she'd never met to live as his property in a distant town. Her dreams of teaching, of perhaps one day running her own school, would be extinguished forever. As the afternoon light filtered through the thin curtains, Violet made her decision. She would not wait meekly for Emmett Holloway to claim her. By nightfall, she had packed her few belongings into a small carpetbag: clothes, her mother's hairbrush, a treasured book of poetry, and the $23 she had secretly saved from selling embroidery work. She waited until her father's drunken snores filled the house before slipping out the back door into the cool night air. The spring evening was alive with cricket song as she made her way toward the livery stable at the edge of town. If she could convince old Mr. Peterson to rent her a horse, she might make it to the next town before anyone noticed her absence. The livery was dark when she arrived, but a light flickered in the small attached cabin where Peterson lived. Violet hesitated, gathering her courage before knocking softly on the door, but it wasn't Mr. Peterson who answered. Instead, a tall young man with broad shoulders and a weather-beaten face stood before her, a questioning look in his striking blue eyes. "Can I help you, miss?" His voice was deep but gentle, with the slight drawl of someone who'd spent time in Texas. I was looking for Mr. Peterson," Violet stammered, clutching her carpetbag tighter. "My uncle's gone to bed. I'm watching the place while he's recovering from a fall." The stranger stepped into the moonlight, revealing a strong jawline shadowed with stubble and dark hair that curled slightly beneath his hat. "Cole Norwood. I arrived in town this afternoon." "Violet Garrison," she replied automatically, then immediately regretted giving her real name. "I need to rent a horse. It's urgent." Cole studied her face, noting the fading red mark on her cheek and the determined set of her jaw. His gaze dropped to the carpet bag. "Going somewhere at this hour, Miss Garrison? That's my business, Mr. Norwood." A hint of a smile touched his lips. "Indeed it is, but a young woman traveling alone at night is asking for trouble." He paused, then asked more softly, "Are you in some kind of danger, Miss Garrison?" Something in his tone concern without condescension made Violet consider telling him the truth. But years of her father's betrayals had taught her caution. "I simply need to leave town tonight. I can pay." She reached into her pocket for her carefully saved money. Cole raised a hand. "Put that away. I'm not renting you a horse at this hour." Before Violet could protest, he continued, "But I will escort you wherever you're headed come morning. No charge." "I can't wait until morning. I need to be gone before my father wakes." Understanding flickered in Cole's eyes. He glanced at the mark on her cheek again, and his jaw tightened. "He did that to you?" Violet straightened her spine. "My father believes he's found a suitable husband for me. I disagree." "Ah," Cole nodded slowly. "And this disagreement ends with you running away in the middle of the night." "He's selling me to Emmett Holloway," Violet said, the words bitter on her tongue. "A man 3 times my age from Helena who's already buried 2 wives. Cole's expression darkened. "Holloway, I know of him, not a man I'd wish on any woman." He seemed to make a decision. "Wait here." He disappeared into the stable, returning moments later leading 2 saddled horses, a sturdy chestnut mare and a powerful black gelding. "My uncle won't mind if I borrow these. I'll leave him a note." Cole took Violet's carpet bag and secured it to the mare's saddle. "Do you ride, Miss Garrison?" "Since I was a child," she replied, surprised by this unexpected turn of events. "Good. We'll head west toward Redcliffe. I have a friend there who might help." Cole hesitated. Unless you had another destination in mind, Violet hadn't thought beyond escaping Silver Ridge. "No. Anywhere is better than here." As they mounted their horses and rode quietly out of town under the blanket of stars, Violet felt a strange mixture of terror and exhilaration. She had never done anything so reckless in her life. Glancing at the tall cowboy riding beside her, his profile strong against the moonlit landscape, she wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. "Why are you helping me?" she asked when they were safely beyond the town limits. "You don't know me." Cole was silent for a long moment. "Let's just say I understand what it's like to be treated as property." His voice held an edge of old pain. "No one deserves that. Especially not a woman with courage enough to leave everything behind rather than submit to it." They rode in companionable silence as the first hints of dawn began to lighten the eastern sky. Violet found herself studying her unexpected companion. Cole Norwood carried himself with the easy confidence of a man accustomed to hard work and open spaces. His clothes were worn but clean denim trousers, a faded blue shirt, and a leather vest that had seen better days. The revolver at his hip seemed more a tool than a threat. "You're not from Silver Ridge," she observed as they stopped to rest the horses near a small stream. Cole smiled, creasing the corners of his eyes. "No, madam. Born in Tennessee, raised mostly in Texas. Been drifting north these past few years, working ranches along the way." He helped her dismount with strong, gentle hands. "My mother's brother, Peterson, wrote asking for help with the livery. Seems I arrived just in time. Just in time to be dragged into my troubles," Violet said, a note of apology in her voice. "I'm not being dragged anywhere I don't want to go." Cole unsaddled the horses, allowing them to drink and graze. "Besides, I've had my fill of towns for a while. The open country suits me better." As the morning sun climbed higher, they continued their journey west, leaving the main trail for less traveled paths that wound through pine forests and across rolling hills. Cole proved to be a knowledgeable guide, pointing out landmarks and sharing stories of his travels that made the miles pass more quickly. By midday, Violet's muscles ached from the unaccustomed hours in the saddle, but she refused to complain. The farther they rode from Silver Ridge, the lighter she felt, as though shedding an invisible burden with each mile. "We should rest," Cole said, noticing her fatigue despite her efforts to hide it. "There's a clearing ahead with good water." The spot he chose was perfect, a grassy meadow beside a clear stream sheltered by cottonwood trees. Cole helped Violet down from her horse, his hands lingering at her waist for just a moment longer than necessary. "Thank you," she said, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. She stepped back, unused to the proximity of a man who wasn't her father. If Cole noticed her discomfort, he didn't comment. Instead, he busied himself setting up a small camp, retrieving provisions from his saddlebags. "It's not much," he apologized, offering her jerky, dried fruit and a canteen of water. "But it'll keep us going until we reach Redcliffe tomorrow." "Tomorrow?" Violet couldn't hide her disappointment. "I thought we might reach it by nightfall." Cole shook his head. "It's a good day and a half's ride, especially at the pace we're setting. We'll need to make camp tonight." He paused, studying her expression. "Your father won't catch up to us if that's what you're worried about. How can you be sure?" "Because he'll head east first toward Helena, where he thinks you're being sent. By the time he realizes you've gone west, we'll be well hidden." Cole's confidence was reassuring. "I know these mountains better than most locals. There are places we can disappear if needed." As they ate their simple meal, Violet found herself sharing more about her life in Silver Ridge, her mother's death from fever, her father's descent into drinking and gambling, her thwarted dreams of becoming a teacher. "I almost made it," she said wistfully. "I'd been corresponding with a women's college in Denver. They were impressed with my essays and offered a small scholarship." She sighed. "Father burned the acceptance letter when it arrived." Cole's eyes darkened with anger. "Some men don't deserve the families they're given." "What about your family?" Violet asked, sensing his words came from personal experience. A shadow crossed his face. "My mother died when I was young. My father—" He hesitated. "Let's just say he believed a man's children were his to command, same as his livestock." His gaze met hers with unexpected understanding. "I left home at 16 after he tried to force me into working the family land when I wanted to break horses on the neighboring ranch." "So you understand," Violet said softly. "More than you know." Cole stood, gathering their few utensils. "We should keep moving. I'd like to put more distance between us and Silver Ridge before nightfall." They continued their journey through the afternoon, climbing steadily into more rugged terrain. Violet marveled at the changing landscape, the dense pine forests giving way to rocky outcroppings and sweeping vistas that took her breath away. "It's beautiful," she murmured as they paused at a high point overlooking a vast valley. Cole nodded, his expression softening as he surveyed the wild country. "This is why I could never settle in one place. There's too much to see." "Have you never wanted a home of your own?" Violet asked. He was quiet for a moment. "Sometimes I think about it. A small ranch, good horses." His eyes met hers briefly. But it would take the right reason to stop wandering. Something in his gaze made Violet's heart beat faster, and she turned away, pretending to adjust her saddle. As the sun began its descent toward the western peaks, Cole led them to a secluded spot for the night, a small clearing beside a rushing creek, protected on 3 sides by rocky walls. "We'll be safe here," he said, dismounting and helping Violet from her horse. "No one will find this place unless they know where to look." While Cole gathered wood for a small fire, Violet spread her shawl on a patch of soft grass and sat, watching him work. There was an efficiency to his movements that spoke of years living in the wilderness. In less than an hour, he had a fire crackling, the horses tended, and a simple supper heating in a small pan he'd produced from his pack. "It's just beans and bacon," he apologized, handing her a tin plate. "Not exactly what a lady's accustomed to." Violet smiled. "I'm hardly a lady of leisure, Mr. Norwood. This looks wonderful." As they ate by firelight, Violet found herself studying Cole's face, the strong lines of his jaw, the crow's feet at the corners of his eyes that suggested he smiled often, the scar that ran along his right temple and disappeared into his hairline. "How did you get that?" she asked, gesturing to the scar. Cole's hand rose to touch it as if by reflex. "Bar fight in Cheyenne 4 years ago." He chuckled at her surprised expression. "I wasn't always the paragon of virtue you see before you, Miss Garrison." "I find that hard to believe," she said, smiling. "And please call me Violet. I think we've moved beyond formalities." "Violet," he repeated, his voice wrapping around her name like a caress. "Then you must call me Cole." As night descended fully, the temperature dropped. Violet tried to hide her shivering, but Cole noticed immediately. Here, he said, shrugging out of his coat and draping it around her shoulders before she could protest. Take my bedroll too, I'll keep watch by the fire. You can't stay awake all night, Violet argued. We both need rest. Cole considered this, then nodded. I'll spread my blanket on the other side of the fire. That way you'll have your privacy, but we'll both stay warm. As Violet settled into the surprisingly comfortable bedroll, wrapped in Cole's coat that carried the scent of leather and pine, she found herself watching him through the dancing flames. He sat with his back against a tree, his hat pulled low, cleaning his revolver with practiced hands. Do you think my father will come after us? She asked, voicing the fear that had been lurking at the edges of her mind all day. Cole's hands stilled. He might decide you're not worth the trouble. He met her gaze across the fire. Either way, I won't let him take you back. That's a promise. Something in his tone, a steely determination beneath the gentle words, made Violet believe him. For the first time since her mother's death, she felt protected rather than controlled. Thank you, she whispered, then added more softly, Good night, Cole. Good night, Violet, he replied, his voice a warm current in the cool night air. Sleep well. Despite her exhaustion, sleep eluded Violet for some time. Her thoughts whirled with the day's events, the uncertain future ahead, and the enigmatic man who had so unexpectedly become her protector. When she finally drifted off, her dreams were a confused tangle of pursuit and escape, with Cole Norwood's steady presence the only constant. She awoke to the smell of coffee and the soft sounds of morning birdsong, the rustling of leaves, the gentle nickering of horses. Opening her eyes, she found Cole crouched by a small fire, pouring steaming liquid into 2 tin cups. You're awake, he said, smiling when he noticed her watching him. I was beginning to think you might sleep the day away. Violet sat up, pushing hair from her face. What time is it? Just past sunrise. Cole handed her a cup of coffee, strong and black. We should reach Redcliffe by mid-afternoon if we make good time. As they broke camp and prepared to continue their journey, Violet felt a strange reluctance to reach their destination. The past day with Cole had been unlike anything she'd experienced, frightening yet exhilarating, uncertain yet somehow right. They rode side by side through the morning, following game trails that wound through increasingly rocky terrain. Cole pointed out landmarks and shared stories of his travels, his deep voice a pleasant counterpoint to the sounds of wilderness around them. My friend James has a small ranch outside Redcliffe, he explained as they stopped to water the horses at a narrow stream. He owes me a favor or two. He'll let you stay until you decide what you want to do next. And what about you? Violet asked, trying to keep her tone casual. Will you stay in Redcliffe too? Cole hesitated. I hadn't planned that far ahead. I was due back at my uncle's livery in Silver Ridge, but that's not possible now. He looked at her thoughtfully. I suppose I'll find work wherever I can. There's always ranches looking for good hands. The thought of parting ways with Cole left Violet with an unexpected hollow feeling. In just one day, she had come to rely on his steady presence, his quiet strength. The idea of facing an uncertain future without him was more daunting than she cared to admit. They had been riding for several hours when Cole suddenly raised his hand, signaling Violet to stop. His posture had changed, alert and tense as he scanned the trail ahead. What is it? She whispered, fear clutching at her throat. Riders, he murmured, pointing to a cloud of dust visible in the distance. Coming this way. Violet's heart hammered against her ribs. My father, can't tell yet, but we're not taking chances. Cole quickly led them off the trail and into a dense thicket of pines. Stay quiet. Keep the horses still. They dismounted and led the animals deeper into the cover of trees, finding a position where they could watch the trail without being seen. Cole drew his revolver, checking it with practiced ease before returning it to his holster. If it comes to trouble, he said in a low voice, you ride hard for Redcliffe. Don't look back, don't stop for anything. The town's straight west from here, maybe 10 miles. Ask for James Keller at the general store. I'm not leaving you, Violet protested. Cole's eyes softened. I appreciate the sentiment, but this isn't negotiable. He handed her a folded piece of paper from his vest pocket. Give this to James, he'll understand. Before Violet could argue further, the riders came into view, 4 men on dusty horses, moving at a steady pace. With a jolt of recognition, she identified her father's bulky form at the lead, his face set in the grim expression she knew all too well. "That's him," she whispered, shrinking back instinctively. "With Deputy Harris," and she squinted. "I think that's Bill Sanderson and his son from the Mercantile." Cole nodded, his expression hardening. "Your father's called in some favors." He studied the approaching men. "They're following our trail. Won't be long before they spot where we left the path." Violet's mind raced. She wouldn't go back to be handed over to Holloway like a prize heifer, yet she couldn't bear the thought of Cole facing her father's rage alone. "What do we do?" she asked, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. Cole considered their options. "We could make a run for it, try to reach Redcliffe before they catch up." Or, he paused, a plan forming in his eyes. "We could split up. I'll lead them away while you continue to Redcliffe." "No." Violet's response was immediate and firm. "I won't let you risk yourself alone for my sake." A ghost of a smile touched Cole's lips. "You're not what I expected, Violet Garrison. Neither are you, Cole Norwood." Their eyes met in a moment of perfect understanding. "Then we stick together," he decided. "But we need to move fast and quiet. Follow me." Leading the horses, they crept deeper into the forest, away from the trail. Cole moved with the silent confidence of a man accustomed to wilderness, choosing their path carefully to leave minimal signs of passage. Violet matched his caution, placing her feet where he indicated, avoiding twigs and loose stones that might betray their presence. They had gone perhaps half a mile when shouts echoed through the trees. Jacob Garrison's voice, raised in anger as he discovered their abandoned trail. "They've found where we left the path," Cole murmured. "We need to pick up the pace." For the next hour, they moved swiftly through the forest, climbing steadily higher into more rugged terrain. The sounds of pursuit grew fainter, then louder again as their pursuers recovered the trail. "They're persistent," Cole observed grimly as they paused to rest the horses in a small clearing. "Your father must want you back badly." "It's not me he wants," Violet replied bitterly. "It's the money Holloway promised him. $500, I overheard him say, enough to pay off his gambling debts and keep him in whiskey for months." Cole's expression darkened. "A man who'd sell his own daughter deserves neither her loyalty nor her concern." He checked the position of the sun through the tree canopy. "We're getting close to the ridgeline. Once we cross it, the terrain opens up. We'll make better time, but we'll be more visible." Violet nodded, understanding the dilemma. "What do you suggest? We wait until dusk, then cross the ridge under cover of darkness. There's a hunter's cabin I know of on the other side. We can shelter there for the night, then make for Redcliffe in the morning." It was a sound plan, but Violet couldn't help the flutter of apprehension at the thought of spending another night alone with Cole, not from fear of him, but from the growing awareness of her feelings toward him. In just 2 days, this quiet, honorable cowboy had shown her more respect and consideration than any man in her life. They found a well-concealed spot to wait out the remaining hours of daylight, a natural hollow beneath an overhanging rock, screened by thick underbrush. Cole spread his coat for Violet to sit on, then took up position where he could watch for their pursuers. "They'll have to make camp soon too," he observed as the forest shadows lengthened. "Even your father won't risk these mountains after dark." Violet hoped he was right. The thought of her father's rage, fueled by whiskey and wounded pride, made her shudder. Jacob Garrison was not a man who took defeat gracefully. As twilight deepened into dusk, they prepared to move again. Cole checked and tightened the horses' saddles, making sure nothing would creak or jingle as they crossed the ridge. "Stay close," he instructed as they mounted. "Follow exactly where I lead. The path narrows in places, and it's a long way down if you miss a step." The ridge trail was as treacherous as Cole had warned, a narrow track that wound along the spine of the mountain, with steep drops on either side. In the gathering darkness, Violet could barely make out the path ahead, trusting her horse and Cole's guidance more than her own eyes. They were halfway across when a shot rang out, echoing across the mountainside. Cole's horse reared in surprise, nearly sending him over the edge. Violet gasped as he fought to control the frightened animal, his silhouette stark against the night sky. "Cole," she cried, reaching toward him uselessly. "Stay back," he commanded, finally bringing his mount under control. They've spotted us. We need to move now. More shots followed, the bullets whining harmlessly past them in the darkness. Cole urged his horse forward at a dangerous pace, with Violet close behind. The path widened as they descended the far side of the ridge, allowing them to pick up speed. Behind them, angry voices and the sounds of pursuit grew louder. Jacob Garrison's voice rose above the others, slurred with drink and fury. "Shoot the cowboy. The girl comes back alive." Cole led them off the main path and into a dense stand of pines, the horses navigating the uneven ground with remarkable surefootedness. The sounds of pursuit gradually faded as their pursuers hesitated, unwilling to follow blindly into the treacherous terrain in the dark. After what seemed like hours, Cole finally slowed their pace. "The cabin should be just ahead," he said, his voice tight with tension. "We'll be safe there for the night." The small structure emerged from the darkness, a simple log cabin with a single window and door, built against the side of a hill for protection from the elements. Cole dismounted quickly, helping Violet down before securing the horses in a small lean-to at the side of the cabin. "Inside," he urged, guiding her toward the door with a hand at the small of her back. "Quickly." The interior of the cabin was Spartan but clean, a single room with a stone fireplace, a rough-hewn table and chairs, and a narrow cot against one wall. Cole barred the door behind them, then moved to the window, peering out into the darkness. "Do you think they followed us?" Violet asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Cole shook his head. "Not in the dark, but they'll resume the search at first light." He turned to face her, his expression grave in the dim moonlight filtering through the window. "We'll need to leave before dawn." Violet nodded, suddenly overwhelmed by the events of the past 2 days. Her legs trembled beneath her, and she sank onto one of the wooden chairs, fighting back tears of exhaustion and fear. Cole was at her side instantly, kneeling before her with concern in his eyes. "Are you hurt?" "No," she managed, shaking her head. "Just tired and afraid." Without a word, Cole took her hands in his strong, calloused hands that engulfed her smaller ones with gentle warmth. "I made you a promise, Violet. I intend to keep it." Looking into his eyes, steady, unwavering, honest, Violet felt something shift inside her. The fear didn't vanish, but it receded, replaced by a certainty that as long as Cole Norwood stood beside her, she would never again be alone in her struggles. "Thank you," she whispered, squeezing his hands. "For everything." A small smile touched his lips. "You can thank me when we reach Redcliffe safely." He rose to his feet. "Let me get a fire started. It gets cold up here at night." While Cole busied himself with the fireplace, Violet explored the small cabin. Despite its simplicity, it was well maintained, with dried herbs hanging from the rafters and shelves stocked with basic provisions: flour, coffee, salt, and beans in sealed jars. "Someone uses this place regularly," she observed. Cole nodded as he coaxed flames from the kindling. "It belongs to James, my friend in Redcliffe. He uses it during hunting season and lets trusted friends stay when they're passing through. And he won't mind us being here, not once he hears our story." The fire caught properly, casting a warm glow throughout the cabin. Cole straightened, brushing dust from his hands. "There are some supplies in that trunk by the bed. Blankets, maybe some food." The trunk yielded not only blankets, but also a change of clothes, a small medical kit, and several cans of peaches, a luxury Violet hadn't enjoyed in months. Cole grinned at her delight when he opened one, sharing the sweet fruit between them as they sat before the fire. "Tomorrow we'll reach Redcliffe," he said, setting aside the empty can. "James will help us figure out what comes next." Violet nodded, though the question of what comes next had been weighing on her mind. Once they reached safety, what then? Cole had his own life, his own path. He had already risked more than enough for a woman he barely knew. "What will you do?" she asked quietly. "After Redcliffe, I mean." Cole was silent for a long moment, staring into the flames. "I hadn't thought that far ahead," he admitted finally. "Before meeting you, I was planning to help my uncle for a while, then maybe head north to the cattle country in Montana Territory. And now—" Violet held her breath, afraid of his answer yet needing to hear it. Cole's eyes met hers across the small space between them. "Now I'm not sure. These past 2 days have changed things." He hesitated, then added softly, "Changed me. Something in his gaze made Violet's heart beat faster. She looked away, suddenly unable to meet the intensity in his eyes. "I never meant to disrupt your life. Some disruptions are worth having." Cole's voice was gentle. He reached out, his fingers barely brushing her hand where it rested on her knee. Violet, a crash outside interrupted whatever he had been about to say. Cole was on his feet instantly, his hand going to his revolver as he moved to the window. "What is it?" Violet whispered, fear clutching at her throat. "Not sure, probably just an animal." But Cole's tense posture belied his casual words. He peered out into the darkness, then slowly relaxed. "A deer, I think. Knocked something over by the lean-to." Relief flooded through Violet, followed by a wave of exhaustion so profound she swayed where she sat. Cole noticed immediately. "You need rest," he said, his voice brooking no argument. "Take the cot. I'll keep watch by the fire." Too tired to protest, Violet allowed him to guide her to the narrow bed. He covered her with one of the blankets from the trunk, his hands gentle as he tucked it around her shoulders. "Sleep," he murmured. "We leave at first light." Despite her exhaustion, Violet found herself watching Cole through half-closed eyes as he returned to his position by the fire. In the dancing firelight, his profile was strong and somehow familiar, as if she had known him far longer than 2 days. As sleep finally claimed her, her last thought was that in Cole Norwood, she had found something she hadn't known. She was seeking a man who saw her not as property to be traded or controlled, but as a person worthy of respect and protection. A man who offered not possession, but partnership. A man who might, perhaps, offer love. Dawn broke cold and clear over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold that gradually gave way to brilliant blue. Violet woke to the smell of coffee and the soft sounds of Cole moving about the cabin, preparing for their departure. "Good morning," he said when he noticed her watching him. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I expected," she admitted, sitting up and pushing her hair from her face. She accepted the cup of coffee he offered, cradling its warmth between her hands. "Any sign of my father?" Cole shook his head. "Nothing yet, but we shouldn't linger." He handed her a chunk of cornbread and some dried beef. "Eat quickly. We need to be on the trail within the hour." As they prepared to leave, Violet was struck by how smoothly they worked together, anticipating each other's needs without words. It was as if they had been traveling companions for years, rather than days. Outside, the morning air was crisp and clean, the forest around them alive with bird song and the rustling of small animals in the underbrush. Cole checked both horses thoroughly before helping Violet mount. "Redcliffe is about 5 hours' ride from here," he explained as they set off. "We'll stay off the main trails as much as possible, just in case your father and his friends are still searching." The day was perfect for travel, sunny but not too warm, with a gentle breeze that carried the scent of pine and wildflowers. They rode side by side where the path allowed, talking easily about their lives, their dreams, the books they had read and places they had seen. Violet found herself sharing things she had never told anyone, her secret hope of someday writing stories of her own, her love of astronomy instilled by her mother, her fear that she might never find a place where she truly belonged. Cole listened with genuine interest, offering his own confidences, in return his complicated relationship with his father, his years working as a ranch hand in Texas, his dream of someday breeding horses on land of his own. "I've always believed a person should be judged by what they build, not what they're born to," he said as they paused to rest the horses beside a small stream. "My father couldn't understand that. He thought following his path was the only honorable choice." "My father was the same," Violet replied, sitting beside him on a fallen log. "He couldn't see that forcing me to marry a stranger wasn't protection, it was a kind of prison." Cole nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Not all prisons have bars, I suppose." He glanced at her, something unreadable in his eyes. "What will you do now, once we reach Redcliffe?" Violet had been pondering that question since they left Silver Ridge. "I still have the letter from the women's college in Denver," she said slowly. "If I could find work as a teacher or shopgirl, I might save enough to attend by next year." "You'd make a fine teacher," Cole said with a smile that warmed his blue eyes. "Those Denver students won't know what hit them. Violet laughed, pleased by his confidence in her. And what about you? Will you continue north as you planned? Cole was quiet for a moment, staring at the rushing stream. I'm not sure anymore, he admitted finally. These past few days have given me a lot to think about. Before Violet could ask what he meant, Cole stood abruptly. We should keep moving. I'd like to reach Redcliffe by early afternoon. They continued their journey in companionable silence, the tension of the previous days gradually giving way to anticipation as they drew closer to safety. By midday, the landscape began to change, the dense forest thinning as they descended into a broad valley where scattered ranches and farms dotted the rolling grassland. Redcliffe is just beyond that ridge, Cole said, pointing to a low hill ahead. James's ranch is about 2 miles outside of town. As they crested the ridge, the small settlement came into view, a cluster of wooden buildings nestled at the junction of a river and a well-traveled road. Smoke rose from chimneys, and Violet could make out figures moving along the single main street. It's smaller than Silver Ridge, Cole observed, but a good place. Decent folks for the most part. They approached James Keller's ranch from the north, following a winding creek that eventually led to a neat collection of buildings, a 2-story house, a large barn, several corrals, and outbuildings. A man was working with a horse in one of the corrals, his back to them as they rode up. James. Cole called as they drew closer. The man turned, revealing a weathered face beneath a shock of graying hair. His expression shifted from wariness to surprise and then to genuine pleasure as he recognized Cole. "Norwood, you old devil," James exclaimed, leaving the corral to greet them. "What brings you to my doorstep? Last I heard, you were heading for your uncle's place in Silver Ridge." Cole dismounted, clasping James's hand warmly. "It's a long story, old friend, one best told over coffee." He helped Violet down from her horse, his hands lingering briefly at her waist. "James Keller, allow me to introduce Miss Violet Garrison." James tipped his hat, his keen eyes taking in Violet's travel-worn appearance and the wary set of her shoulders. "Miss Garrison, welcome to Redcliffe." "Thank you, Mr. Keller," Violet replied, straightening her spine despite her fatigue. "I apologize for arriving unannounced," James chuckled. "Norwood never announces himself. Why should his friends be any different?" He gestured toward the house. "Come inside. My housekeeper will have dinner ready soon, and you both look like you could use a good meal." The interior of the ranch house was surprisingly comfortable, polished wood floors covered with colorful rugs, sturdy furniture arranged around a massive stone fireplace, and shelves lined with books and small treasures from a life well lived. A middle-aged woman with kind eyes and flour-dusted hands greeted them in the kitchen. "Mrs. Reynolds, my housekeeper," James introduced her. "Best cook in 3 counties. "You'll be wanting baths and fresh clothes before dinner," Mrs. Reynolds declared, eyeing their dusty appearance with good-natured disapproval. "Miss, I've got a spare dress might fit you, and there's hot water ready in the washroom." The luxury of a proper bath and clean clothes nearly brought tears to Violet's eyes. When she emerged from the washroom, wearing a simple blue cotton dress borrowed from Mrs. Reynolds, she felt more herself than she had in days. She found Cole, James, and Mrs. Reynolds in the dining room, where the table was laden with a feast that made her stomach growl audibly: roast chicken, mashed potatoes, fresh bread, and vegetables from the garden. Cole stood as she entered, his eyes widening slightly at her transformed appearance. He had changed as well, into clean clothes borrowed from James, his dark hair still damp from washing. "You look." He began, then seemed to lose his train of thought. "That is, I hope you're feeling better after your bath." "Much better, thank you," Violet replied, feeling a blush rise to her cheeks under his admiring gaze. Over dinner, Cole explained their situation to James. Violet's father's attempt to sell her to Holloway, their escape from Silver Ridge, and the pursuit that had followed. James listened without interrupting, his expression growing increasingly grave. When Cole finished, the older man shook his head slowly. "Jacob Garrison," he mused. "The name's familiar. Wasn't he involved in that mining swindle over in Granite Creek a few years back?" Violet nodded, not surprised. "He's been involved in many schemes over the years, none successful." and now he's trying to sell his own daughter. James's disgust was evident. Some men shouldn't be allowed to have families. The question is, Cole said, leaning forward, what happens next? Violet's father won't give up easily, not with Holloway's money at stake. James considered this. Silver Ridge is 30 miles east. Even if Garrison figures out you've come to Redcliffe, he has no authority here. Sheriff Blackburn is a fair man. He won't hand a young woman over to be sold like property. I don't want to cause trouble for anyone, Violet said quietly. Perhaps I should continue to Denver. The women's college, Denver's 300 miles south, James interrupted gently. That's a long journey for a young woman alone. She won't be alone, Cole said, his voice firm. All eyes turned to him and a flush crept up his neck. What I mean is, I can escort Miss Garrison to Denver, ensure she arrives safely. James raised an eyebrow, a knowing smile playing at the corners of his mouth. That's mighty chivalrous of you, Norwood, especially considering your plans to head north. Cole avoided Violet's questioning gaze. Plans change. Mrs. Reynolds, who had been quietly observing the conversation, stood to clear the dishes. What this young lady needs right now is rest, not more travel. She'll stay here tonight, and decisions can wait until morning. No one argued with Mrs. Reynolds's practical wisdom. After dinner, she showed Violet to a small but comfortable bedroom on the second floor, providing a nightgown and fresh towels. That Cole Norwood's a good man, the housekeeper remarked as she turned down the bed. Known him since he was just a lanky boy working James's horses. Never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. Violet felt her cheeks warm. We barely know each other. He's simply being kind. Mrs. Reynolds gave her a knowing smile. Kindness is a fine foundation for something more, Miss Garrison, better than most marriages start with. With that cryptic observation, she bid Violet good night and left her alone with her thoughts. From her window, Violet could see Cole and James sitting on the porch below, their conversation occasionally drifting up to her on the evening breeze. She couldn't make out the words, but the low rumble of Cole's voice brought an unexpected comfort. For the first time in years, Violet fell asleep feeling truly safe. Morning brought clear skies and a sense of possibility that Violet hadn't felt in a very long time. She dressed in the blue dress Mrs. Reynolds had lent her, pinning her hair neatly before descending to the kitchen where the housekeeper was preparing breakfast. The men are out checking the north pasture, Mrs. Reynolds informed her. They'll be back soon. Coffee. Violet accepted the steaming cup gratefully. May I help with anything? The older woman's approving smile suggested she'd passed some unspoken test. You can set the table if you like, plates in that cupboard there. As they worked together preparing the morning meal, Violet found herself asking questions about Redcliffe, the people, the opportunities, whether there might be work for someone with her skills. Town's growing, Mrs. Reynolds replied thoughtfully. The school's looking for an assistant teacher come fall. Pays not much, but it's respectable work. An assistant teacher, Violet couldn't hide her interest. Do you think they might consider someone without formal qualifications? Miss Parker runs the school, stern but fair-minded woman. She values intelligence and good character over fancy papers. Mrs. Reynolds gave her an appraising look. You seem to have both. Before Violet could respond, the back door opened and Cole entered, followed by James. Both men were dusty from their ride, but Cole's face brightened visibly when he saw Violet. Good morning, he said, removing his hat. You look rested. Good morning, she replied, suddenly shy under his admiring gaze. Mrs. Reynolds has been telling me about Redcliffe. Over breakfast, the conversation turned to practical matters. James offered Violet a place to stay for as long as she needed, an offer she accepted with heartfelt gratitude. I'd like to find work, she added. Mrs. Reynolds mentioned the school might need an assistant teacher. Miss Parker's getting on in years, James agreed. Been talking about finding help for a while now. I could introduce you this afternoon if you like. Cole had been uncharacteristically quiet during this exchange. Now he cleared his throat. What about your plans for Denver, the women's college? Violet hesitated. The dream of attending college had sustained her through many dark days in Silver Ridge. But now, looking at the faces around the table, kind, accepting, Offering her a place in their community, she wondered if perhaps there were other paths to the life she sought. "Denver will still be there next year," she said slowly. "Or the year after, perhaps. Perhaps I could save for tuition while teaching here." Cole's expression was unreadable, but something in his eyes made Violet's heart beat faster. James and Mrs. Reynolds exchanged knowing glances. "Well, that's settled then," James declared, pushing back from the table. "I'll take you to meet Miss Parker after lunch. In the meantime, Cole, why don't you show Miss Garrison around the ranch? I'm sure she'd like to see the foals." Outside, the spring day was perfect warm sunshine, a gentle breeze carrying the scent of wildflowers, birds singing in the cottonwood trees that lined the creek. Cole led Violet toward the pasture where several mares grazed with their gangly-legged foals. "James breeds some of the finest horses in the territory," Cole explained as they leaned against the fence, watching a particularly bold foal investigate a butterfly. "I worked here for nearly 2 years before heading to Wyoming. It's beautiful," Violet said, breathing in the clean air. After the confines of Silver Ridge, the open spaces of the ranch seemed like freedom incarnate. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, eventually finding themselves beside the creek, where a fallen log provided a natural bench beneath the shade of a massive cottonwood. "Violet," Cole began as they sat, then paused, seeming to search for words. "I've been thinking about what happens next." She looked at him, suddenly apprehensive. "You mentioned escorting me to Denver, but that's not necessary now. You should continue with your plans." "That's just it," he said, meeting her gaze directly. "My plans have changed. Because of me." The question slipped out before she could stop it. Cole nodded slowly. "Because of you, because of us." He took a deep breath. "Violet, I know we've only known each other for 3 days. By any reasonable standard, that's not enough time to feel what I'm feeling." Violet's heart hammered against her ribs. "And what are you feeling?" "Like I've found something I didn't know I was looking for." Cole's voice was low, intense. "When I saw you standing at my uncle's door that night, something changed. And every moment since then has only confirmed what I felt then." He reached for her hand, his calloused fingers gentle against her skin. "I'm not asking for promises. I know you have dreams, Denver, the college. I would never stand in the way of those dreams." His blue eyes held hers. "But I'm asking for a chance to see if what started between us might grow into something permanent." Violet's throat tightened with emotion. In Cole's face, she saw everything she had ever wanted: respect, admiration, and something deeper, something that looked remarkably like love. "What are you saying, Cole?" she whispered, needing to hear the words. "I'm saying I'd like to court you properly, Violet Garrison. Here in Redcliffe, where you can pursue your teaching and I can work James's horses." His lips curved in a smile that made her heart flutter. "I'm saying I think we could build something good together, if you're willing to try." Violet thought of all the paths that had led to this moment: her mother's death, her father's cruelty, the desperate escape from Silver Ridge. Each painful step had somehow brought her here, to this creek bank, to this man whose eyes held promises she had never dared to dream of. "I'm willing," she said softly, her fingers tightening around his. "More than willing." Cole's smile was like sunrise breaking across the mountains. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned toward her. His lips, when they met hers, were gentle, questioning, asking rather than demanding. Violet answered with a kiss of her own, her free hand rising to rest against his chest where she could feel the strong, steady beat of his heart. When they finally parted, Cole rested his forehead against hers. "I promise you this, Violet Garrison, you'll never be anyone's property. Not your father's, not Holloway's, not even mine. Whatever we build together will be as equals or not at all." Tears pricked at Violet's eyes, not tears of sorrow or fear, but of a joy so profound it left her speechless. She had fled Silver Ridge seeking only escape. Instead, she had found a future brighter than any she had imagined. "I believe you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I believe in us." The sound of approaching hoofbeats interrupted the moment. Cole was on his feet instantly, positioning himself protectively in front of Violet as a rider came into view around the bend in the creek. It was James, riding fast. "Cole," he called as he drew near. "Riders coming from the east, 4 men moving with purpose." Violet's heart plummeted. My father, Cole's expression hardened. James, take Violet back to the house, I'll meet them. No, Violet said firmly, standing beside him. I won't hide, this ends today. Cole studied her face, reading the determination there. After a moment he nodded. Together then. They mounted the horses James had brought and rode back toward the ranch house, arriving just as 4 dusty riders came into view on the eastern approach. Jacob Garrison, Deputy Harris, and the Sandersons, father and son. Cole, Violet, and James formed a line across the yard, waiting as the newcomers drew rein a few yards away. Jacob Garrison's face was flushed with drink and fury, his bloodshot eyes fixing on Violet with cold rage. There you are, girl, he spat. Time to come home. Holloway's still waiting, though he's none too pleased about the delay. Violet sat straight in her saddle, chin high. I'm not going anywhere with you, father, not today, not ever. Jacob's hand moved to his holster. You'll do as you're told or what? Cole interrupted, his voice deceptively calm. You'll shoot your own daughter, in front of witnesses. Stay out of this, Cowboy, Deputy Harris warned. This is family business. The lady has made her choice, James said, his authoritative tone reflecting his status in the community. You have no authority here in Redcliffe, Harris, and you, Garrison, threatening your daughter at gunpoint won't play well with Sheriff Blackburn. Jacob's gaze shifted between the 3 of them, calculating his options. Holloway paid good money, he said finally. $500. I owe him the girl or the cash. You sold me, Violet said, the words like ice. But I was never yours to sell. Here's what's going to happen, Cole said, his hand resting casually near his revolver. You're going to turn around and ride back to Silver Ridge. Tell Holloway the deal is off. Miss Garrison stays in Redcliffe, Jacob laughed harshly. And why would I do that, boy? Because if you don't, James interjected, I'll be happy to share what I know about that mining swindle in Granite Creek. Judge Wilson might be interested to hear how investors lost their life savings. The color drained from Jacob's face. You're bluffing. Try me. James's expression was implacable. Leave now, Garrison. Leave your daughter in peace, or I promise you'll face consequences far worse than losing Holloway's money. A tense silence fell over the yard. Violet held her breath, watching her father's face as he weighed his options. Finally, with a curse, Jacob jerked his horse around. She's not worth the trouble anyway, he snarled. Never was. His cold eyes found Violet one last time. You're no daughter of mine. Don't ever come back to Silver Ridge. I don't intend to, Violet replied evenly. With a final venomous glare, Jacob Garrison spurred his horse and rode away, the other men following reluctantly behind. Violet watched them go, a strange mixture of grief and relief washing over her. The man riding away was her father by blood, but he had never truly been family in the ways that mattered. Cole moved his horse closer to hers, his hand reaching to cover hers where it rested on the saddle horn. Are you all right? Violet nodded, surprising herself with the truth of it. Yes. I think I am. She looked up at him, finding strength in his steady gaze. It's over. Not over, Cole corrected gently, just beginning. 5 years later, Violet stood on the porch of the small house she shared with Cole, watching as he led their daughter on her first pony ride around the corral. 4-year-old Emma Norwood's laughter rang out across the yard, her dark curls bouncing beneath her small hat as she gripped the saddle horn with determined little hands. Look, Mama, she called. I'm riding like Papa. I see you, sweetheart, Violet called back, smiling at the picture they made Cole's tall form walking beside the gentle pony, one hand ready to catch Emma if she should slip. His face alight with pride and love, so much had changed in 5 years. After that confrontation with her father, Violet had indeed become Miss Parker's assistant at the Redcliffe School, discovering a natural talent for teaching that brought her more satisfaction than she had imagined possible. Cole had stayed on at James's ranch, working with the horses and gradually saving to buy land of their own. They had married that first winter, a simple ceremony in Redcliffe's small church, with James giving the bride away and Mrs. Reynolds wiping away sentimental tears. The following spring, they had purchased this property, 20 acres of good land with a small house, a barn, and enough pasture for Cole to begin breeding the horses he'd always dreamed of raising. Emma had arrived 2 years into their marriage, bringing a joy neither of them had known was possible. Now, with another child on the way, Violet's hand rested unconsciously on her swelling belly. Their happiness seemed complete. Cole led the pony back to the porch, lifting Emma down and setting her on her feet with a proud pat. "Did you see, Mama? I didn't fall once." "You're a natural horsewoman," Violet assured her, smoothing her daughter's windblown hair. "Just like your father." Cole's arm slipped around Violet's waist, his hand gentle over the place where their second child grew. "She has her mother's determination," he observed, dropping a kiss on Violet's temple. "Heaven help us when the new one arrives. 2 stubborn Garrison women might be more than I can handle." "Norwood women," Violet corrected, leaning into his embrace, "and you wouldn't have it any other way." "No," Cole agreed, his blue eyes warm with love as he gazed at his family. "I wouldn't change a single thing." As Emma ran off to check on the new kittens in the barn, Cole turned Violet to face him, his expression suddenly serious. "Do you ever regret it, not going to Denver, the college?" Violet shook her head without hesitation. "Never. I found something better than what I was looking for." She stretched up to kiss him softly. "I found home." Cole's answering smile was all the confirmation she needed that the path they had chosen together, a path that had begun with a desperate escape, and a cowboy's promise of love, had led exactly where they were meant to be. Sometimes, Violet reflected as she watched the sun setting over their land, over the life they had built together. The greatest adventures began with the courage to leave behind what was familiar but wrong, and trust in the promise of something better. Her father had tried to punish her by giving her away to a man who would have broken her spirit. Instead, she had found a man who cherished it, a cowboy who had promised her love and delivered so much more. Partnership, respect, family, and a home where she was valued not as property, but as the heart of everything that mattered. It was a promise kept, a love story still unfolding, day by day, beneath the vast Montana sky.